Good evening, everyone. Give it a couple more minutes and then we will get started. All right. Seeing a few more trickle in, but for the sake of time, we will go ahead and begin. Welcome everyone to our third Tiger Talk Parent Family webinar of the summer. My name is Casey Ford, and I serve as the Interim Director for Student Transitions in the Center for Student Leadership and Engagement. Again, this is part of the Parent and Family Orientation Experience here at Clemson. So we know that some of you maybe have been able to join us for Ready, Set, Roar. Some of you maybe have not. In any case, we know that that is a specific format and a specific way that we're able to give information and not necessarily go as deep into certain areas as we'd like. And so we provide this series as a way for you all to get some devoted time with some of those experts across campus and learn a little bit more about the resources that we have to offer. And so tonight is all about health and wellness at Clemson. So in just a few minutes, I will let our presenters introduce themselves to you all. They will then share their content. And then at the end, if we have any questions left over, we will get those answered and then we will wrap up. This is a Zoom webinar. So I imagine many of you are familiar with this format at this point, similar to a Zoom meeting, but of course, you can only see our little boxes on the screen, and audio and video has been muted just to keep us kind of moving along slowly. This is being recorded, so if you joined late or maybe have friends who weren't able to make this one or think of some questions later and want to reference those answers, don't worry, this will be recorded in the next couple of days, and then we will send that out through the Clemson Parent and Family Experience portal. For your context, all of these that we do throughout the summer are then published to our YouTube page. So if you go onto YouTube and type in Clemson Family Programs, you will find all the Tiger Talk recordings there as well. On your toolbar, you'll see a few options there, one of them being the Q&A feature. We would ask that you use that tool to submit questions. That's the easiest way for all of us as the hosts and panelists to see those. If we're able to answer those right then in the moment with a typed response back, we'll do that, but we'll also answer those out loud. Or if it ends up being covered in the content that we share, we'll go ahead and mark that as answered as well. And then again, any questions at the end that we've not gotten to, we'll take some time to answer, or my staff and I will follow up with you in the next week to make sure that you were all set. All right, with that, I will hand it over to tonight's presenters to give their introductions.
Good evening. Thank you all for joining us. We are, I think, speaking for both me and Jennifer, really excited to talk with you all about health and wellness and how we support our students here at Clemson. My name is Jared Heydrich. I serve as an assistant dean of students and the director for the Office of Advocacy and Success, which I'll tell you a lot more about here in just a few minutes, but excited to spend the evening with you.
Hello, everyone. I am Jennifer Goree, and I am the Director of Healthy Campus, which is part of Student Health Services. So I'm going to cover content related to counseling and psychological services and some data related to the student population and how we work together to foster a safe and healthy campus. So excited to talk with you more tonight.
Awesome. And kicking us off will be Jared.
Wonderful. Thanks, Casey. So you can go ahead and click over to the next slide. As I mentioned, I lead our Office of Advocacy and Success here at Clemson, which is truly meant to be a place to help students and families to navigate Clemson. We know that we are a large institution delivering a small school experience, and know that that also means there's a lot of resources, and it's hard to know what all exists to support a student's health, to support their well-being. And so our goal is to help kind of be that individualized place to help students navigate and create a plan that works for them and works for their families. And so we do that through offering direct support to students, advocating for students where appropriate, or helping them to advocate for themselves, and truly being a center that knows about the resources that exist here on our campus, in our local community, so that we can help students and their families to connect to those so that they can be their best selves. We do that through inspiring a sense of belonging, success, and a focus on helping students to stay enrolled. We know that being enrolled at a college or university is a huge protective factor for helping folks to maximize their health and well-being and their longevity. And so we really focus on helping folks to stay here at Clemson and be supported. But knowing that sometimes needing to step away is also good. And so we help students navigate that and to come back when they're ready. We do that through working with students, through their families, working with our partners here on campus to really empower folks to be themselves. At the bottom of that screen there, you see 4 kind of main areas that really represent our core pillars for the Office of Advocacy and Success. The one that we are most known for and we'll talk most about today is the Care Network. And that is our kind of individualized student support experience through our office. We also help coordinate responses to student emergencies. I'll offer the caveat, we are not police, we are not law enforcement, we are not crisis counselors, so we may not be providing that immediate crisis or emergency response, but we help to manage the institution's response and ongoing follow-up when big things happen. Including serving on call. A member of our team is on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year to help support students and their families, particularly if there's an incident that or a concern that leads them to visiting one of our local hospitals, working to support them while they're there and to come back. I talked a lot about our resources already. And then we also strive to be a support for all of our students that live off campus. So about 75% of Clemson students live off campus, mostly after their first year. But we try to be that primary office of support for our off-campus students, much in the way that our Clemson home colleagues in residential living are primary support for our students living on campus. But we certainly maintain a very close relationship with Clemson Home to support our on-campus students as well. But we also recognize that we cannot do this alone. And so one of our biggest goals is to ensure that we are creating a culture of care and belonging here on our campus. We firmly believe that all members of our community, whether that is faculty, staff, other peer students, their families, we all have a strong responsibility for supporting each other, their success, and our well-being, and knowing that we can't do that alone. We also know from lots of data that students respond best to guidance and support that's provided to them by individuals that they know and individuals that they trust. And so one of our biggest approaches is to try to provide support at what we call the lowest level of intervention or the lowest level of intrusion possible. And we have a lot of avenues through which we do that, while also still making sure that we don't silo information. We know that when we put the puzzle pieces together, that's when we have the best chance to support a student and their success and their well-being. And so our office really does serve as a centralized place for supporting students, offering consultation to our campus partners about how to support students so that we do that in the best way possible. And so we do that through the Care Network, which we'll talk more about here in just a moment. So the Care Network, as I mentioned, is a service of the Office of Advocacy and Success. I'll start referring to it as OAS, as we're known here on campus, which is a division, an office within the Division of Student Affairs. And so as I mentioned on the previous slide, we do believe in providing support at that lowest level of intrusion possible. And so to that end, we will often partner with folks who refer students to the Care Network to provide that support where the student is at. We will also work with many of our partners across student affairs. And so while the student may reach out to the Care Network and to our office, they may actually receive a response back from their community director that works in the building that they live in. Or they may receive a response from one of our leaders in fraternity and sorority life who work with our FSL community. So we try to help provide support where the student's at or our military and veteran connected students will work through our military and veteran engagement office to provide support to those students when that's appropriate or coming here into our office. But as I mentioned, the goal of the Care Network is to offer that individualized assistance to students to help them with a goal of connecting to resources that will meet their specific need. As I mentioned earlier, we know that Clemson is a large place with many resources, and so our mission is really to understand the resources that are available and help students learn which one will help address their need, how to connect to and use that resource, or to navigate a particular process effectively. We operate on a referral based system, meaning that we rely on members of our Clemson community to refer students to the Care Network when they're concerned about a student's success or their well being. We most often receive referrals from faculty members, advisors, students' residential community mentors, which folks may be more familiar with the term resident assistants that work in university housing. But we also encourage our family members and their loved ones to reach out to our office, which I'll talk more about in a minute, when you may be worried about your student, their success, or their well being, so that we can help also educate you on the support systems that exist around the university. Additionally, many members of our community will often confuse the Care Network and CAPS, or Counseling and Psychological Services. Jennifer will talk much more about CAPS and their services in the Student Health Services section. But it's important to know our Care Network does not provide counseling or therapy. Rather, we utilize our staff to really develop close helping relationships while coaching a student toward identifying resources that are going to support their needs, their success goals, their well-being goals, learn how to navigate those processes or resources, talk with them about incorporating self-care into their routine or developing skills to help advocate for themselves and their needs so that they can best support their own well-being. As I mentioned earlier, we are not an emergency resource. And so I do like to highlight this slide to say, if you are concerned about your student, maybe their immediate safety or their immediate health because of a medical emergency or mental health emergency or some other concerns, such as the ones you may see here on the screen, Clemson University Public Safety, which includes our University Police Department, our University Fire and EMS Department, is going to be the best resource to immediately address that concern. But we really still encourage you to reach out to the Care Network and to submit the care referral form so that once that immediate emergency is addressed, they've gotten the care that they need at the hospital, they've been able to talk with a mental health counselor about a mental health emergency, that we can then follow up the next business day to get your student connected to ongoing support and things like that. This slide here shows you many of the common referral reasons of why folks may be referred to the Care Network. And so, as you can see, it really covers a very wide range of related concerns. When we think about well-being, we think about different dimensions of well-being, and we know that when an individual may be struggling in one or more area, that starts to create impact in another. And so we work with students to navigate academic stress, emotional stress, financial stress, social or relationship based stress, to learn how to navigate those, build those resiliency skills so that they can continue to be successful academically and personally. But what I felt was more important, if you want to click over, Casey, on this next slide, is really to share with you when we look here at our Clemson student population, these are the top 10 reasons that we see first year students referred to our Care Network. And so as you'll see, rising there at the top of the list are both emotional, academic, and physical health concerns. We know that the transition to college is very stressful. Learning to be independent, manage new relationships, those sorts of things is very impactful for students. And so those are the top related concerns. As you can see, 5 there, navigating academic procedures as you learn a new school, a new environment, and doing things independently. We see folks refer to us to learn, how do I drop from a class? How do I go about navigating financial aid, that sort of thing. Number 7, as I mentioned there, folks come to college and they get hurt or they become sick and need to visit the hospital. As I mentioned earlier, our office partners with the Dean of Students office to manage an after-hour system so that no matter the time of day, um, we are aware of any student who may be transported to the hospital so that we can provide immediate support there to the student and navigating being at the hospital or coming back from the hospital. Number 8 is one to highlight alcohol use. Jennifer will share some more data for you all about substance use that we see here at Clemson. It's a very natural part of navigating that transition to college and that newfound independence, right? And so we certainly believe in a harm reduction approach, know that folks will engage. And so we have lots of programs to help folks understand how to use alcohol responsibly and to know the resources that exist. We largely receive concerns from peers who are actually concerned about others and their use of alcohol. And so we will also coach students on how you talk to a friend about their alcohol use. And then the other major concern that we will manage is alcohol related transports to the hospital. And how do we support those students and connecting to our alcohol and drug support resources here on our campus to navigate those things. Also, a big first year issue is at this age is when folks start to experience a first major loss, be that a grandparent, a parent, a sibling, a friend. And so we often provide support around grief and how do you advocate for your needs while grieving, while also taking care of yourself and that sort of thing. So how do you connect with our office? As I mentioned earlier, we do operate on a referral-based system. And so online on our Office of Advocacy and Success webpage, which has a short link of clemson.edu/care-network, will take you right to the page. And as you can see there with the purple arrow pointing to that orange button that says Care Network Referral Form, that referral form is a great way to connect someone with our office 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That form, however, is not monitored 24/7. It's only monitored during business hours. And we will generally see them pretty quickly during business hours, but it can take up to 1 business day for us to see that information. And so that's why we like to highlight that if it is an emergency, please engage with our public safety partners. If it needs a more immediate response, we certainly welcome you to contact our office. And if you want to click over, Casey, to the next page, we certainly welcome parents and family members to reach out to our office. We are always happy to consult and to talk about any concerns that you may have and helping your student to navigate that concern or to navigate the resources that may exist. Our phone number is there on the screen. Just let the receptionist know that you'd like to talk with one of our care case managers about a concern you have for your student. If one's available, we'll certainly immediately try to take your phone call or call you back within the same business day to hear about that concern. Generally, we do also will reach out to students once we've talked to a parent or family member about a concern so that we can also make sure they directly feel supported here on campus. But in that conversation, know that we will share general information with you about resources that may be applicable and how to navigate those, or how to move through a university process, or what office may be the best one to talk about that process. Casey, if you'll click over to the other side of that slide, we also like to take this time to talk about FERPA. And so one of the biggest hurdles for family transitions is now your student is the owner of their privacy right under that family educational right to privacy once they start attending college, regardless of their age. There are some exemptions to that, but they're far and few between. And so, unfortunately, absent some written consent from your student, we may not be able to share direct information that we know about your student, but we will always be willing to have a conversation, hear your concerns, and talk with you about our resources and our processes. If we do have a student who is willing to sign a consent form, we are welcoming of engaging parents and being positive supports for our students. I see that Jordan just dropped that link there to our University FERPA policy, which is a great place to learn more. But do know that FERPA does allow an exemption for appropriate school officials to disclose certain information without consent when there is a health or safety emergency. And so I offer that information to you to offer you some reassurance that if there is a true health or safety emergency that puts an individual or others at risk, we will engage you. And so hopefully that offers you some concern or some solace to any concern, that if we are truly, truly, truly concerned about individual safety, we recognize that parents are potential partners in helping address that and keep folks safe, and we will engage you around that. We also, as I said, are proud to make sure that we know about campus resources that exist around our campus. We do maintain a resource hub on our webpage for advocacy and success, that currently is undergoing a facelift. So you see the current version, but our hope is that by the time your students here, that webpage will be even more robust and a wider representation of the breadth of support that Clemson offers to our students. But this is one of our most visited web pages in student affairs. It really does help folks to narrow in on what office might be the best office or what resource might be the best support for a student. And it's organized by various different types of issues that folks experience during their lifespan as a college student here at Clemson. And so I encourage you to also take a look at this page as you are having conversations and hearing the things that your student may be sharing with you in that phone call home. Familiarize yourself with this website and all of the resources that may exist, so that you can also be a partner to your student in offering a recommendation to visit Redfern Health Center or to visit the Career Center when maybe they're not too sure about that major that they picked a year ago. All of those great resources are right there on our resource hub. So as I said, offering that referral program, submitting that report, what happens once you submit that? We do have up to a business day to review that. Like I said, we typically are looking at those same day and even within a couple of hours, but we can take up to one business day to respond. We use some national evidence-based standards to make sure that we are responding and providing the best support in the most appropriate way. And so we take a very close look at that information. As I mentioned, we try to be a really centralized place for information. And so we'll often look at other systems to know how your student may be doing academically, to know how your student may be engaging in the residence hall, to help us gauge just how concerned to be about this concern that someone else has. And that will help us determine how to follow up and how to reach out to that student. Once that happens, it'll be assigned to a specific care case manager or a member of our team that will follow up directly with the student. We have, I believe, 12 folks now on our team who engage. Some of those are full time, some of those are graduate assistants, and some of those are also helping as part of their role. As I mentioned, we have folks in housing, folks in fraternity and sorority life who help us to reach out to students. But they will reach out to the student. They will reach back out to the person who's concerned to make sure they know we did get the concern, to ask more questions, and be kind of establishing that primary point of contact for you. So if you submit a care report for a care network referral form, you can expect that someone from our office will give you a call back to learn more about that concern and establish themselves as a point of contact for you. Once that is assigned to one of our staff members, we will reach out to students in many, many ways. We will send them an email, but we know that students are not always the best about reading their emails. And so we will also give them a call on their cell phone. We will send them text messages through our online text messaging system. We use an electronic system to send kind of formal letters that help us to know that they actually open our letter. And so we will reach out to them in a lot of ways. We may even reach out to a home phone number to make sure that you've talked to them recently if we're having trouble getting in touch with them. And so while we may not be able to say in the moment that we have a concern, if you're getting a phone call from the Office of Advocacy and Success, that might be an indicator to you that there's someone at Clemson who's worried about your student and their ability to be successful academically or personally. And so I want you to know that part of our process is when someone's concerned, we can't reach your student through email, phone calls, text messages, we may actually reach out to you. We may not be able to share a lot of information, but we'll reach out to you to make sure that you've been in touch with them recently, and to kind of solicit your assistance in helping get them connected to our office. And so that may be a tip of the hat to you in the moment to say, let me check in with my student. Once we have an opportunity to connect with them, we do directly address the concerns that are shared with our office. We assess what their needs are, as I mentioned earlier. We think about well-being through 8 dimensions of wellness, and so we talk with students very specifically about how are they doing academically, socially, emotionally, how are they financially, and really understanding what are the scope of a student's needs, and maybe not just the initial concern that someone sees on the surface, but really getting in at that deeper level to understand what your students' experience is, what support do they have, what support don't they have and might need, and then offer to help connect them to the right resource on our campus that's going to hopefully help support their success and hopefully support their well-being overall. It is important to know that engaging with the Care Network is voluntary. We cannot require people to come and meet with us. We can't require them to go over and talk with a counselor at CAPS. And so we will always try our best to engage, but know that when a student isn't interested or willing, that's okay. We will still always share information to them about the resources that exist in writing. So if they have that, we encourage you that if your student mentions that someone from CARE reached out to them at Clemson, hopefully you also will encourage them to respond to that. One of the biggest misconceptions about OAS and the Care Network is that we have this overarching authority at Clemson. Unfortunately, we do not. No academic authority. We cannot influence academic processes or outcomes. But what we can do is help to advocate for your student, to help an office or a faculty member truly understand their experience, help provide some legitimacy to it. But ultimately, any decision like making up an exam, excusing an absence, things like that, those are always going to lie with the professor and with the department. So we're happy to help advocate for your student. We're happy to help your student learn to advocate for themselves. But we may not be able to exert any authority over a particular process. And last on this miscellaneous thing of slides, of information on this slide, is that we do not disclose who submitted a care referral unless that person gives us explicit permission to do so. There are some caveats to that, and I encourage you to look at the FERPA policy, and those do outline those there. And so know that if you contact us, we would not necessarily say that Casey's mom reached out to us and submitted this care report and wanted us to check in on you. And so we encourage you to submit referrals as you're comfortable. We do always encourage people who make referrals to let the student know that they're making that referral. Students are smart. They know who they said what to or how they showed up in a certain space, right? And so they may put 2 and 2 together that Casey's mom, because I told Casey's mom this piece of information. And so that's why we do always encourage people to say, hey, I reached out to the Care Network on your behalf. Hopefully they follow up with you and give you some support and some resource information. But we welcome families to be partners in submitting those referrals. This is my last slide. I won't dive too deep into it because Jennifer will talk a lot more about CAPS and counseling and psychological services, but we do call that CAPS here on our campus. It's our campus counseling center that offers a very wide range of mental health services, from workshop seminars to group sessions to individual therapy. And so they are truly the ones who may be diagnosing a mental health condition, treating that, providing crisis counseling. Whereas the Care Network, as I mentioned earlier, we are really focused on developing helping relationships that really coach students towards finding the best support that's going to meet their need. Sometimes that's counseling, sometimes that's finding a student organization that helps build their sense of belonging and their purpose, finding that right internship that aligns with their career goals, all kinds of things. But our goal is to get them to the right resource, not necessarily to diagnose an issue or to treat them, but help them to make meaning of what support exists around them. Some important things to note is that in the state of South Carolina, licensed clinicians cannot solicit mental health services to clients. And so for that reason, counseling and psychological services, if you were to call there and to share a concern about your student's mental health and well-being, they may not actually be able by law to reach out to your student to offer them to come in for a session at CAPS. They may be able to do that if there is an immediate crisis or emergency, But beyond that, they may not be able to offer that. And so you're certainly welcome to call Counseling Center to talk with them about your concerns. They'll provide you with some guidance and advice, but they'll probably close that conversation by encouraging you to submit a referral to the Care Network through our online form or to contact our office. And so we really do encourage you to do that if they make that recommendation, so that we can also follow up and help get that connection for your student over to the Counseling Center. We work very closely with them around emotional and mental health concerns, so that we can make sure that we're responding in the best way, because they are the mental health experts on our campus. And so we want to try to provide support that kind of meets their expectations, and their ways that we can support student mental health. And as I mentioned earlier, we can never require a student to go to counseling, but we will certainly always offer the opportunity to help them make that phone call, to walk in the door, so that they can get the support that they need.
Awesome. Thank you, Jared. Next up is Jennifer Goree.
Thanks for all that great information, Jared. This is certainly very related. I'm going to start out talking a little bit about some data that we collect here at Clemson, and that's also collected nationally. We do the National College Health Assessment every 2 years, depending on the cycle. We're actually moving to a 3-year cycle now. But the data that I'm going to share with you tonight, and I've just pulled some particularly relevant data points that basically help us put into a Clemson context and then a national context many of the issues that Jared was just talking about. So just to give you an idea of what we're looking at, the data that we will see in purple is from Clemson University in 2020. This was right before COVID shut everything down. So this really is pre-COVID data. The national reference data next to that is from 2020, and that's in the dark gray. And the orange is Clemson's 2022 data, so coming out of COVID, and then the light gray is the national reference data. Next slide. So to mirror really what Jared was talking about, we asked students, have you ever been diagnosed by a healthcare or mental health professional with any of the following ongoing or chronic conditions? So as you can see, anxiety, depression, and students who report being diagnosed with both, we have seen a statistically significant increase in all of those areas from 2020 to 22. And the rates are high. You will notice that we are below the national reference data in all of these categories. But still, when you think about 28% of our respondents saying that they've been diagnosed with anxiety, 20% with depression, and 17.6% with both. These are high numbers, even though we're below the national average. So you can see that this is why we put a lot of emphasis on these areas. Next slide. Overall stress. So within the last 30 days, how would you rate the overall level of stress that you've experienced? What we see in a number of measures is that things have moved from the low levels, or we were pretty good before COVID, to moving more into the moderate or high. So 51.6% of our students report moderate levels of stress in 2022, whereas in 2020 that was it was 22%. Next slide. Psychological distress is a scale, and this looks at a variety of different questions, and then there's an aggregate score that puts us in a no or low psychological distress, which, as you can see, in 2020, 67% of our students fell into that category. And then come 2022, we've moved over into almost 53% of our students are in that moderate category. And then even for the serious psychological distress, we've got 18% of our students reporting that level of stress. Next slide. The UCLA loneliness scale tested, this is again a group of questions that gives an aggregate score. And so you either test positive for loneliness are negative for loneliness. So much like the flu, you don't want to test positive for loneliness. So we have in 2022, almost 48% of our students reported testing positive for loneliness. Again, we are better than the national average, but this is a real problem that our students are experiencing. They're struggling with anxiety. They're struggling maybe to make meaningful connections. Clemson does an amazing job trying to foster that. But our students are arriving kind of with this problem and issues around this. So it's an area of focus for us. Next slide. This is around self-injury and suicide. These are, certainly the most concerning kinds of categories. And we ask, within the last 12 months, have you intentionally cut, burned, bruised, or otherwise injured yourself? These are lower numbers than the national average, but they're definitely concerning. We have 6.5% of our students reporting that in 2022. And then most concerning of all, attempted suicide. That's 2% of our student population. So if you extrapolate that to our entire student population, that's over 400 students that are attempting suicide. So this is a very, very important concern, and we really want to be partners with you in making sure that we're addressing any issues early on before things escalate. Next slide. The suicide behavior questionnaire, again, is one of these composite questions. So it's looking for positive suicide behavior. So not attempts, but questions around, sometimes I don't feel like my life is worth living, or those sorts of questions. So again, we are below the national reference data by quite a lot, but still very concerning numbers. Almost 22% of our students screened positive for suicide behavior. And as it also points out here, that is a statistically significant increase from 2020. Next slide. So what are some of the things that contribute to some of these issues? Sleep is we sometimes think of sleep as being a luxury, but sleep, we know, has direct impact on so many as the health of so many of our physical systems, particularly around mental health and also particularly around academic success. So if you hear that your student is constantly complaining about being tired or not getting enough sleep, or even if they're sharing with you that their sleep is very scattered, they're staying awake very late on the weekends and sleeping late on the weekends, but then having to get up really early during classes during the week, encourage them to look at that and really encourage good sleep habits. Most of our students, or many of our students, are saying they're feeling tired or sleepy 3 to 5 days of the week. Some percent, almost 29%, are reporting 6 to 7 days a week. We want our students to get better sleep. So I think it's important for us to model this for our students ourselves, prioritize sleep, and then talk about it as a really good health behavior. Next slide. This is looking a little bit about substance use. This slide's looking at substance use ever. So have you ever used these substances? Clearly, alcohol, cannabis, and tobacco are the major substances of choice for our students. And interestingly enough, pre-COVID to post-COVID, our rates are going down, and we are below the national average on, well, let's see, on hallucinogens and cocaine and prescription opioids, we're below the national average. Some of our other areas, cannabis, we're below, and alcohol, we're kind of right in line. So this is substance use ever. The next slide, if we could go to that one, looks at problematic use. So this is behavior that is not just I have had alcohol in my life. This is I'm drinking alcohol in a moderate level. Again, you'll see alcohol, cannabis, and tobacco are by far the drugs of choice for our students. Next slide. Violence, abusive relationships, and personal safety. This is looking at encounters in the last 12 months. Again, you'll notice that these numbers are low. We are also lower than the national average on these, but this is still something that I think that deserves a conversation with your students. And it is not always, but very often related to alcohol or other drug consumption. And in that, and I want to be real clear about this, alcohol is very often used as a tool to facilitate these sorts of behavior. So definitely talk with your student about consent. And how you are legally not able to give or obtain consent when you are intoxicated, and have that explicit conversation with your student. And if they have questions about it, encourage them to talk with you or someone else about it. Next slide. So food security, food security is an area that we're more and more concerned about. So we asked students, basically, how many times in the past 30 days are you skipping meals? Are you worried about not having enough food, or have you been hungry? So if you look at the next slide, this is one of the rare slides that I'm sharing with you where we have more of a problem than the national average, which is a surprise to a lot of people, including myself. This data was not data that I was, this one jumped off the page to me. So we do have the Paw Pantry in place at Clemson. We do have local community initiatives to address food insecurity. But this is also one of the issues that we know has multiple repercussions in terms of student success. If you're worried about where your next meal is coming from, or if you're hungry, this is a problem that's going to make it harder for you to be academically successful. Next slide. And in terms of impediments to academic performance, we look at a variety of different issues. These are the ones that have the most common negative outcomes for our students. So procrastination being the number one. Definitely, I would encourage your student, if you have a student that you're kind of concerned about this as an issue, really get them to connect with the Academic Success Center early on. Build some of those skills. If they've been relying on you to help them kind of navigate those deadlines, they need to develop those skills to be able to do that on their own. And the Academic Success Center can really help with that. But then stress, anxiety, and depression are the next. And then, as I mentioned before, sleep difficulties. So as I said, sleep is not a luxury. It is a necessary health issue that has significant academic repercussions. If you are not sleeping, you're not transferring those short-term memories into long-term memory. You're not able to learn the content. So those staying up all night, cramming for exams is not an effective study technique, which goes back to procrastination. So these things are related. Let's get ahead of the game before these things become problematic. Next slide. So what are we doing about all of this? First of all, we're talking with you about it, and we really want to partner with parents. We want parents to understand sort of the landscape of the college experience now. If you had a college experience 20 or 30 years ago, it is a very different world. So how do we help students in the place where they are at this point? So what we do at CAPS, we focus on brief solution-focused interventions, and we assign students to a particular level of care that is most appropriate for them. That could be self-directed, and it could be therapist-assisted online services. It includes educational programming and workshops, developing skills in groups, and also individual, group, and family and couples counseling. I do want to specifically mention something to you all because y'all can really advocate for us. Counseling and Psychological Services in the past has had issues with a wait list, a long wait list. We have fixed that problem. That is no longer the case. And if your student comes to you and says, I don't really want to go to CAPS because I've heard that I can't get in, please encourage them to not kind of believe this sort of older story. This CAPS has done an enormous amount of work to streamline the process and get people in quickly based on their level of need. Next slide. So how do you make an appointment? Your student would call the CAPS appointment line, and they would do an intake via phone. So they're going to have a phone intake straight away. It seems like it's just going on its own. And they would do a phone screen, and then they would be assigned.
I think we may have lost Jennifer.
Psychological. Did I get lost?
I think we lost you for a second. Let's see.
Do you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I never saw myself get lost, so it's hard.
Okay.
Yeah,
Sometimes
I think we lost you at the appointment line, Jennifer.
Okay. Okay, so the whole appointment line issue where you do a phone intake and then you are assessed, and then the therapist will develop treatment recommendations and assign you to the appropriate level of care. And then you can call after hours for psychological emergencies by pressing option 2. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Okay, so we really focus on all of the areas that students are struggling with or potentially could struggle with. So substance use and abuse, relationship counseling, sexual violence and other trauma, veterans and military connected students, eating disorders, student athlete well-being, and then we do provide dialectical behavior therapy, which is an intensive form of therapy. Next slide. This is the stepped care model that I was referring to. It really gauges what a student might need. Some students are just having adjustment issues. You know, this first time they've been away from home. They may need a much less intensive intervention, all the way up to intensive therapy. So we figure out where they need to be on that stepped care model and assign them to the appropriate level of care. Next slide. And then we connect. As Jared mentioned, we connect to other offices like Advocacy and Success, Office of Community and Ethical Standards, the Academic Success Center, and the Michelin Career Center. And then we also do, if we want to go to the next slide, a lot of prevention work. Many of y'all have heard about opioid overdose concerns with fentanyl. We know that our students are not intentionally abusing opioids, but we do have a concern about accidental poisoning. So we have established a Narcan program that is an opioid reversal medication, and we've put those around campus. And we train our students around the risks associated with alcohol and other drugs and encourage them, those who do abstain from alcohol and other drugs, and many of our students do, we encourage that and then encourage ways to lower their risk. Next slide. We do that through social media campaigns. We do that through educational modules. Our students are all going to take the Alcohol EDU program before they arrive and then go through the Aspire to Be Well program. And then in terms of mental health, everywhere you go, you will see a How Are You Really sticker. There are almost 6,000 of these around campus. Every mirror, every door, they can scan the QR code and learn ways to access care. And we also do the Tigers Together suicide prevention training for all of our, as many people are still familiar with the RAs, those are all trained. Many of our academic advisors and faculty members go through that program as well. Next slide. The Out of Darkness Walk is an annual event to raise awareness around suicide prevention. This past year, we raised over $20,000 and had almost 200 participants. And it was a really, really amazing event to mark this increase in attention and awareness around suicide prevention. Next slide. And then we just look at overall well-being. We've engaged with almost 1,200 students and last year to provide well-being education programs. And the Aspire to Be Well program, all of the students will go through this as well, and they will hear a lot of the content we're sharing with you tonight about how to be an active bystander and reach out to other students who may need help and how to access those resources. Next slide. We provide creative inquiry teams for students who may be interested in health and working in these areas. We do a suicide prevention CI team, one that looks at data, and one that is for the creative team, inquiry team that are the instructors for the Aspire to Be Well program. And the final slide here. We send out an email to our students every month with content around health and well-being and safety. We share this space with the CUPD and the Student Health Center and other areas like OAS to make sure our students know particular resources for that particular time. So if it's football season or flu season, things that they should be worried about or concerned about or making sure they're doing during those particular times. So that goes out to every student. And we have a really good click rate, really good read rate for that as well. So we try to make it very relevant to their experience in the moment. One more slide, I think.
Oh,
nope, that's it.
Might have missed it. Sorry about that.
Thanks very much. And I'll turn it over to you, Casey.
Thank you, Jennifer. And thank you all for your patience with the slides that decided to fight me this evening. All right, so that wraps up our time here for specifically our health and wellness session tonight. I think we are answering our last couple of questions here. Perfect. Okay, checking our chat one more time. While we were answering those, did want to just remind you all that this session, as well as all additional sessions, will be recorded and then sent out probably in the next week through our Clemson Parent and Family Experience portal. I'll have Jordan go ahead and drop a link to that portal in our chat, just in case you have not yet seen it. Again, many of you are likely members already and have accounts through that resource, but super quick way to make sure that you are getting all content directly to your email. If not, let me check one more thing here. All righty. All right, as we are wrapping up, just wanted to remind you that our next Tiger Talk will focus on student life at Clemson, so all things student involvement. Again, we touched on a few of those resources tonight, but want to make sure that we devote some time to just a few of the many ways that your students can be an active participant in what is happening on campus. And so join us not next week, join us July 9th for that session. And then I'll also have our other sessions coming up here for you as well. Again, all of these sessions, as well as the links to register for them, are on our website. Jordan, if you don't mind dropping that link as well. So on the Center for Student Leadership and Engagement website. And then all of these can be found on the Clemson Parent and Family Experience portal as well. All right, I believe that wraps us up for this evening. Again, if there's anything that we missed, we will make sure and follow up with you all. But again, just thank you so much for joining us tonight. And until next time, go Tigers. Bye, everyone.